Greetings and just Esgana. So in this video, I'm gonna discuss about the class diagram that a group made. So first is the library class. So the library class acts as the main controller of the system. It manages both members and library items. So the attributes is private members, list member. So this attribute stores all registered library member. And then next is the private item list library item. So this attributes contains all books and magazine available in the library. And then next is the private book count int. So this attribute keeps the track of the number of the books in the library. And then next is the private magazine count int. So same as the book count, this is the magazine count. So this attribute keeps the track of the number of the magazines. So next is the methods of the library class. So the first method is the public add member m of type member. So this method adds a new member to the library. And then next is the public remove member m of type member. So this method removes the existing member in the library. So this method removes it. And then next is the public add item, title string, type string, and library item. So this method creates and adds a new item to the library collection. And then next is the private generate item number, type string int. So this method generates a unique identification number depending on the item type. And then next is the private create library item, title string, type string, number int, library item. So this method constructs a library item with the provide details. So this method provides a details for the library item na we create. And then next is the store item, library item. So this private method saves the created item into the library collection. And then this private display item added item, library item. So this method shows the confirmation that the item was added in the list in the library. And then next is the public remove item, library item. So this method removes an item from the system. So next is the member class. So the connection between library and member class is aggregation because one library can have many member in the system. So the member class represent a person who registered in the library and allowed to borrow items. So the attributes in the member class is private member count int. So this is the keep the track of how many members exist. And then private name string. This is the attribute that stores the name of the member. And then next is the member number int. So this private attribute is a unique identifier assigned to each member. Then the last is the private borrowed items list library item. So this is the attribute that list containing items currently borrowed by the member. So the method of the member class is the public borrow item library item. So this allows the member to borrow item from the library. So this is the function of the method. Allows the member to borrow the item in the library. And then next is the public return item library item. So this method returns the borrowed item back to the library. So next is the public show borrowed items. So this method display all the items currently borrowed by the member. So and then the last is the library item class. So the connection between library and library item class is aggregation because library can have one to many library item in the library system. So the connection between member and the library item is association, because one member can have zero to many library item borrowed in the library class. So the library class is a library item class is the class represents an item that can be borrowed from the library, such as books and magazine. So the attributes of the library item class is private title string. So this is the attributes that store the title of the item. Then next is the private type string. So this is the identifies whether the item is a book or a magazine. So next is the private is borrowed boolean. So this attribute indicates whether the item is currently borrowed. And then next is the private item number int. So this is a unique identification number for each item. So in the methods, so first is the public is borrowed boolean. So this method check if the item is currently borrowed. And then next is the public borrowed item. So this method marks the item as a borrowed when members borrowed it. And then next is the public return item. So this method marks the item as returned when the member return it in the system.
Dangal greetings, I'm Ronorman B. Canayong, and I'm going to explain the main class of our lab quiz. First thing is this library equals new library. This line creates an object of the library class named library. The program uses this object to manage the library system. The object stores members and library items and perform operations such as adding or removing data. And next line is this member M1 equals new member Juan Dela Cruz, member M2 equals new member Maria Clara. These codes create two objects from the member class. The first object represents member name Juan Dela Cruz, and the second object represents the member name Maria Clara. And next is this line of code. This line is just printing the label of adding members. Same with others like adding library items, borrowing items, borrowed item list, returned items, and lastly the removing data. And next is library that add member M1 and M2. This code is add the two member objects to the library system. The method add member stores the member inside the library object, so the system tracks all registered name. And next is this is just printing and space to separate all this. And next is library item book 1 and library item magazine 1. This line creates two library items using the add item method. The first item is book titled Java Programming. The second item is a magazine titled Science Monthly. The method returns a library items object which the program stores in the book 1 and mag 1, which is magazine. And next is M1 that borrowed item. This code is allow member to borrow items. Member 1 borrows the book and member M2 borrows the magazine. The borrow item methods adds the selected items to the member's borrowed item list. And next is this show borrowed items. This lines of code is it's display the items borrowed by each member. The method show borrowed items check the members borrowed item list and prints the item names on the console. And next is this M1 that return item book. book 1. This line returns the book borrowed by member M1. The return item method removes the item from the member's borrowed item list. And this lastly, this library that remove member M2 and library that remove item mag1, which magazine. The library remove member, this line remove data from the library system. The remove member method deletes the member Maria Clara from the list of members, and this remove item method deletes the magazine Science Monthly from the list of the library items. And that's all. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Borboran, and today I'll be explaining to you the library class. The library class contains two array lists, which are for the member and the library item. It also contains two counters that will be used later on. Now then, let's move on to add member, remove member, and library item. Add member uses a temporary member name and checks if it isn't in the member array list. If it isn't in the member array list, it adds it and then prints out added plus m that get full member name, which gets the entire member's name from member class. Now then, remove member removes a specific member from the member class. Library item, on the other hand, library item adds an item into library with its number being generated from generate item number. Library item creates a new item with its title, its type, and the number from generate item number, stores it, and then displays it later on. Generate item number generates the what is essentially the ID for the specific item. If it is a book, it increments the book count. If it is a magazine, it increments magazine count. Else it adds to the item size. Now then we move on. Private library create library item, which creates the library's item. It returns the item that was created, similar to earlier, title, type, and number. Private void store item is the method that stores the item into the library item array list earlier. System display item added displays the item being added into the library. Remove item, library item site item. If item dot remove item, system dot outprint ln remove plus item get full item name. This part checks if it has already been removed, and if it hasn't been removed, it prints out removed and its full name. But if it has already been removed, it instead displays item not found. And that is all.
Jungle greetings, my name is Abarquiz, and I'm gonna explain about the library item class. So first, let's talk about the relationship between these classes. So library item and library class have a relationship of aggregation because each of them can exist without the others. So meaning, if you remove the other class can still exist, and the multiplicity is one to many. So meaning, one library can have many books or library item, and many books can be in one library. Next is the member member class and library item class. So the relationship between these two classes are association and have a multiplicity of 0 to many, meaning each library item can be borrowed or owned by um, 0 to many members. Now let's talk about the code. So first, this class library item where we declare our classes. So we name it library item, and at the bottom of this we have attributes. We declare it as private so we can encapsulate it later. Our first attribute is string title, next string type, next boolean is borrowed, and int is number. So next, let's go with the constructor. Our constructor have three parameters which can store string title, string type, and int number. And next is the this.title is equal to title. We use this to so that the program will not be confused what are you talking about or what do you point out. So first, this title and this title, this pointing to the attributes in this class. And next is the equal title. This these attributes points in the parameter. So the light blue color points to the class attributes and the darker blue color points to the parameter. Next is the getters and setters. So because we use private attributes for encapsulation, so we use getters and setters. So first is get title, which have a data type of string, and it returns the title. Next, get type, similar to the get title. Next, int, get item number, have a data type of int, and then it returns the item number. Next, boolean is borrowed, so this method only return two value. It's either true or false. So next, public void borrow item. So this method, borrow item, meaning the item is already borrowed, so it will change the is borrow attribute to true. Next is return item. Return item meaning the item is returned and then the books or library item is now available, so is borrowed will be declared as a false if you call this method. Next is the public string get full item name. So this method display the information of the item, like what type is it, item number, and then the title of the books or the item that you borrowed. That's all. Thank you.
Dangal greetings, I'm Dela Cruz Josephine, and today I will explain the class members. For the block 1, which is the class attributes, this section defines what a member is and what information they carry. So, private static int member counter, this is a static variable. It acts as a global counter for the entire class, not just one person. It helps us track how many members have ever been created. Private string name stores the member's name. Private int member number, a unique ID assigned to each member. Private list, library item, borrowed items, a collection, specifically an array list that acts as a digital backpack to store the items a member currently has. For the block 2, which is the constructor, this block runs every time you create a new member. For example, member M1 equals new member John. Member counter increment, every time a new member is made, the global counter increase. This at member number equals member counter. We then take that new count and lock it in as that specific member's unique ID. New array list. This initialize the list so it's ready to store books later. The block tree, which is the informational methods, these are getters and helper methods to format data for the user. Get full member name. Instead of just giving a raw name, this combines the ID and the name into a professional string like member 1 Alice. Block 4. The borrowing logic. This method handles the interaction between a member and a library item. So, the guard clause, which is it first checks if the item is not already borrowed, not item at is borrowed. The update, if it's available, it tells the item to mark itself as borrowed and adds it to the member's borrowed items list. The feedback, if the book is taken, it prints a polite already borrowed message. For the next method, which is the returning logic, this reverses the borrowing process while ensuring security. The validation, it uses at contains item to ensure the member is actually returning something they currently have in their possession. State reset, it tells the item it is now available and removes it from the member's personal list. The block 6, which is the displaying the list, this method shows the user exactly what is in their backpack. So the method show borrowed items. This is a for each loop. It looks at every library item inside the borrowed items list one by one. Numbered list, the count variable makes the output look organized. For example, 1, 2, 3, rather than just a wall of text. That's all, thank you.